Welcome to English Practice Stories.
On November 12, 1928, authorities received a distress call from a remote logging village deep in the Canadian Rockies. There is no extant proof of the village's existence. Given the circumstances, the Agency of Helping Hands undertook extensive effort to ensure the removal of all traces of the village and its inhabitants from the historical record. A recording of the transmission exists in agency archives. The recording is 17 seconds long. Translated, it says this: "It came down from the mountain. It came for us. It's here." What follows is a low, unsettlingly sing-song roar, a sound without parallel, a sound that evolved to send the deepest, most primal core of the human mind into a panic. This panic does not recognize that a century has passed or that thousands of miles now lay between it and the place that sound was made. Extreme weather and difficult terrain precluded timely assistance. All the authorities could hope for was to clean up the mess, whatever it was, as soon as they could. When they finally set foot in the village, they found death. Blood stained every inch of the village, coloring the snow and the ice beneath. Limbs, hair, viscera, and flesh were strewn across the paths. Wild animals and domesticated dogs alike were feeding on the carnage. The initial hypothesis was that a pack of starving wolves had set upon the village, or perhaps that an unusually large bear woken prematurely from hibernation. Given the extent of the damage, some officials even postulated that the animal in question was an undiscovered and possibly isolated specimen of giant prehistoric cave bear woken by the constant rumble of the lumber mill. Shell-shocked authorities began to catalog the damage, so intent on their work that they failed to notice that one of their number had vanished, until one of the searchers noticed the victim's blood-stained badge glinting in the snow and realized that badge was still pinned to his decapitated body. Panic ensued, and with it more carnage. One by one, responding authorities were picked off by this apparently invisible super predator. Eventually, 2 were able to successfully flee the area and made it back to their station. 1 succumbed to injuries sustained during the incident. The other, however, survived. This survivor refused to return to the village, insisting that the beast was no bear but something else entirely, something for which the world had no name. Regardless, authorities issued a warning and offered an astonishing sum for the head of this monstrous bear. Bolstered by the promise of a literal fortune, hunter after hunter sought the creature. Most never returned. The few that did agreed with the first survivor, that this creature was no bear, no wolf, and no creature known to man. The bizarre nature of the original incident and the multiple corroborating accounts eventually came to the attention of the Agency of Helping Hands, at which point it dispatched a team of specialized personnel to the village ruins. Due to the terrain and fears of encountering a giant bear mid-burial, the victims and their numerous pieces had been left out in the snow. Upon examination of these remains, Agency personnel noted clear indications of a beast returning to its kill and correctly deduced that the creature responsible was still actively feeding on the cold preserved corpses. Within hours of arrival, the agency team was attacked by the predator. One member vanished while their backs were turned, his abrupt disappearance signaled by a brief scream that echoed strangely from the surrounding trees. The team successfully traced the scream to a particular copse of trees. Upon approach, all noted that something glittered, strange and high, among the snow-covered foliage, large silver eyes. Realizing it had been discovered, the creature launched itself out of the branches, a blur of white and gray stained with old blood, camouflage that allowed the creature to hide itself among the snow-mutilated corpses that littered the village. The first agency team failed in its mission, although half of the members did survive. The second, much larger team led by the survivors successfully trapped the creature. Shortly after the creature's capture, a child emerged from one of the homes. The girl was crippled and suffered from other visible disabilities and appeared incapable of speech. When she saw the creature had been trapped, she ran to the enclosure and attempted to open it. The sight of her further agitated the creature, who was observed trying to pull the girl into its enclosure. Personnel shot the beast, forcing it to release the child before it could inflict injury. Unfortunately, a stray bullet hit the child. Due to the substantial resources at hand, her life was saved. The creature did not necessarily realize this at the time, however, and the immense volume of its vocalizations resulted in an avalanche that damaged his enclosure. Fortunately, agency personnel were able to repair the enclosure with no further casualties. Due to the size and strength of the creature, it was held on site until specialized transport could be arranged. By this time, the mute girl had healed sufficiently to travel. Since her presence calmed the beast, she was taken into agency custody and housed at the Pantheon in view of the creature until she died of complications related to her gunshot injury 7 months later. For decades, the creature was treated like an abused zoo animal. No one could communicate with it, and no one bothered to attempt to do so until 1966, when an agency caretaker named Patrick W. saw something in the beast that inspired him to make an effort. Patrick W.'s intuition proved correct. Following his personal involvement, the scope of the beast's intelligence quickly became apparent. Its cognitive capabilities exceeded even the most generous of estimations. He even had a name, Numa. Numa possessed the ability to speak, of course, that had been quickly determined upon capture. However, he spoke a language no one at the agency recognized, one that officials dismissed for decades, as one report put it, as nothing more than caveman grunting. With some prodding from Patrick W., Numa began to draw pictographs to accompany his speech. In this way, Numa taught Patrick W. to speak his language. Over time, Patrick W. taught Numa English. Numa was a surprisingly proficient student, driven in part by the fact that he was an intelligent creature that had been completely starved for interaction for the length of a human lifetime. It must be noted that Numa only engages in conversation about topics that interest him. The topic that interests him most is a dire wolf named Pup that he once befriended. The second most interesting topic is the death of Pup. According to Numa, all human beings deserve to die because a band of hunters killed Pup thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago is an indistinct and flawed yet largely accurate assessment. Numa has not been in agency custody longer than any other inmate, but he is most likely the oldest inmate at the agency. He is unpredictable and prone to outbursts, often with deadly consequences. However, he displays remorse for these episodes of poor behavior and has been observed to weep at the departure of certain caretakers. Secondary to an obsessive desire to punish humans for Pup's death, the most important aspect of Numa's psychology is his inability to comprehend time as we do. Numa appears to dissociate for extraordinarily long periods of time, only holding on to memories that are significant to him. For example, he is at least 14,000 years old, yet the abandonment he experienced as an infant is still fresh in his mind. During sessions, he frequently obsesses over the way his mother screamed when he was torn away from her. The only memories clearer to Numa than memories of his mother are the memories of his pet dire wolf, Pup. Numa seems unable to accept that Pup is long and wholly dead, hence his repeated requests for the agency to bring Pup to him. Numa has refused to discuss or even acknowledge the child with whom he was brought into custody. At this time, the agency has no idea whether she was significant to Numa in any way. The agency located Pup's remains in 1988, so perfectly preserved that most of his soft tissues, including his eyes and nose, were intact. At the time, Patrick W. had recently passed away, and Numa was inconsolable. The agency tentatively planned to clone the wolf specifically to stop Numa's frequent tantrums. After rigorous debate, however, it was decided that providing an apex predator with a companion apex predator would further endanger agency personnel. Perhaps more importantly, a clone would simply not be Numa's beloved Pup. Numa's senses are extremely developed compared to those of human beings, and there were concerns that Numa would be able to determine the cloned animal was not actually his Pup. Providing a cloned wolf would likely upset Numa and potentially send him into a psychotic spiral that the agency currently has no way of treating or reversing. Numa has a humanoid appearance, although he is significantly larger than any human being. At his full height, he is 9 feet 3 inches tall with shoulders that measure 44 inches across. His body is covered in very fine, semi-transparent fur with reflective properties. This provides Numa with natural camouflage. He has large eyes with white irises, and his face is unusually flat. Proportionally, his mouth is significantly wider than the mouth of an average human being. His teeth are clearly that of a carnivore, but do not resemble the teeth of any known animal. They fall out and regrow frequently. His jaws possess extra bones and joints that allow Numa's mouth to open excessively wide. These extra bones fold parallel to the teeth, and are effectively invisible when Numa is speaking or at ease. When Numa feeds or wishes to intimidate agency staff, he unlocks these joints and opens his mouth to its widest point, baring all teeth.